Hey everyone, welcome into Feast Spot on Ice. Usually I'm doing fantasy hockey, but in this episode we're going to do a little pivot, change what I cover, what I talk about, and I want it to be a little bit more personable and on the level of what athletes do and stuff like that. So thank you to everyone that followed me doing fantasy hockey. It just ended up being a little bit too stressful and wasn't feeling right for me. So I want to make a change, and I say thank you to all of you that watched those videos. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about how I didn't take no for an answer. I fought through a lot of adversity in my skateboarding, and I want to share that story and maybe create some space for other people to learn from it and maybe not make the same mistakes or just not give up when the going gets tough. So, how I got into skateboarding, when I was about 10 years old, one of my friends had a skateboard and he told me to get one. So, pretty much for my next birthday, was able to get one from a Sport Mart, which I don't think they're around anymore. But my sister got it for me. Between that and my cousin letting me use his skateboard anytime I went over to his house, learning how to ollie in grass, it was something I latched onto right away. A lot of the kids in my class and school that I went to, we all skated all at lunchtime before school, and that's kind of where it all began. I was never one of the ones that was the best. I felt like I was always a little bit behind the eight ball, and I also lived on a farm, so you can imagine it's a little hard to skateboard on a farm where you don't have a lot of concrete, a lot of cement. There's a lot of dirt. Our front yard, our cement pad where we parked our vehicles, that was about the only place that I could skateboard. And I had a little rail, little ramp that my stepdad made me, and that's kind of where I started skateboarding, learning. And after a while, my parents really got annoyed at how loud it was, and they kind of banished me slash set me up with a bigger space that could be mine, as they had three different Quonsets. They're just giant sheds that they put all the machinery in and stuff like that. It didn't have the greatest concrete. It was probably actually the worst concrete out of the three different sheds that we had, but it was something. I was able to make do with it. I had a box, rails, ledges, a whole bunch of different things that I could kind of learn on, and I just loved it. Every minute of it, every chance I got, I was going up there. So that kind of like paints a picture of what I had to deal with. And I didn't get to go to the skate park in Red Deer where I lived as much. It was kind of maybe once a week when my mom went into the farmer's market. So other than that, it was you tried to get your skateboard to school and skate at lunchtime, stuff like that. And like I said, I wasn't the best. It wasn't till about high school where I started to change my trajectory in the sense of all the kids that I knew skateboarding, I started to get better than them. However, you hit high school, you've got grade 9, 10, 11, 12. Everyone that was in there that I knew, there was a lot of good skateboarders. Even the kids the same age that came into the school, I started to see a lot of them were really good, and I was behind. And I just wanted to be as good as them and try and do my best. So for me, what was kind of driving me was just the fact that skateboarding was so individualized and creative. It was something that I could do by myself, whereas after a while shooting a puck on a net and shooting a basketball or trying to play tennis against the garage, whatever like that on the farm, that stuff would get boring really quick. Whereas skateboarding, there was constant progression that I could do, and I could do it all by myself. Didn't have to have a team or anything like that around me. And that's kind of where it went. Partway through high school, I started to learn like skating's not that easy, especially to get sponsored. And that kind of was after watching videos and stuff like that, you got this sense of you wanted to get sponsored, you wanted to be in magazines, you wanted to film a skateboard part, you wanted to send that out to sponsors and stuff like that, or to local shops. And usually the first thing was getting sponsored by a local shop in your town. And luckily at the time there was 3 to 4 skate shops, which not a lot of them are around anymore, but uh, back then it was still really tough to get on. And I was one of those kids, we called them Groms. We were just so addicted to everything about skateboarding. We asked 1,000 questions, whether they were good or not. Some of the guys were really good to answer a lot of those and humor you or bug you. Maybe like there might have been a tiny bit of hazing, not quite, but like you get guys that would come around and you'd learn that you didn't want to get in a lot of their way, but a lot of them were super receptive. They loved that you were skating, that you weren't on a bike or a scooter or rollerblades. So what ended up driving me to get better was partially wanting to get in magazines, wanting to get sponsors. So my first sponsor, if I can remember correctly, I think was Empire, um, or maybe Salvation Skateboards. I don't know which one was, but there was a little bit of stuff, but it wasn't much. And eventually I got Vertical Edge as being one of the core shops in Red Deer at the time. I happened to get on the team there, and I was really struggling to figure out how to fit in. I was trying different styles and trying to get the clothing right, all that dumb stuff. Some of the things I look back at now are just so cringy, whether it was how I gelled my hair under my hat, or tight pants and something that looked kind of like um, some sort of sports hat on top. I don't know. There were certain things that I was trying to mimic some of the pros that I knew, but I was really not that great at doing it. It wasn't until later in high school where I started to really form the style I had, and using that sponsor through Vertical Edge, I would try to keep making videos and try to connect. Like I was trying to network all the time, and Vertical Edge definitely said no to me a little bit. Most of the shops, like one of the main ones that I wanted to ride for, I could not get to ride for. There was so many good guys that skated for them, and I just wanted to be kind of one of those guys. And I still look up to a lot of those guys to this day that are now my friends, which those relationships, those times, never like regret having them. They were amazing. Loved every minute of being around all of it. I ate it all up. But it's skating was a little bit rough because you get little clicks here and there, and it depends on what city you're in. But even the city you're from, you'll get people that'll know you a certain way, or they don't like how you're skating or how hard you try. And I really struggled with that because for whatever reason, I had this drive where I just wanted to be the best I could be, and I would practice continuously as much as I could, whether it was at home at the skate park. And there'd be guys that would sit down, and they'd sit down for a while, and you just hear them chirping you the whole time. And I pretty much ignored it for the most part, and I just kept skating. I didn't care. I just wanted to get better. I just wanted to like learn the newest hard trick, or get something down better than what it was, and just try to be more consistent with my skating. And what that ended up breeding was my nickname. So the reason that it's called Spot or anything like that, that's my gamer tag. That was my Instagram handle for a bit, and now it's Spot on Ice is what we got here. But that nickname came from one day where my good friend Gordon and I, amongst a bunch of us, all started to play a game of ledge skate at the old skate park in Red Deer. And it came down to Gordon and I were the last two. I think we were both at like TT for letters. So it was like whoever fell on the next trick was pretty much done. And I remember at one point, Gordon kept landing everything, and he was landing so many things, and it was just trick after trick after trick, and I would land each one. And eventually I just heard him like skate back, and I think he was just like, fuck, you're a fucking robot or something like that. And I hear the other guys on the ledge go, Spot. So they used my last name, Thiessen, and robot together, and there you go. That's where that one came from, and I've kind of used it for years for different things, but it definitely was one of those moments where you're like, okay, this is sweet. I'm up there with these guys, and Gordon was amazing at skateboarding, and a lot of those other guys in Red Deer were really good at skating, um, but they might have not had the same drive as I did, and I think that sometimes made some of them a little annoyed. Probably thought I was a try hard, and yeah, I'll admit I might have been. I was that addicted to the sport that I just wanted to do the best I could. So going forward, I was trying to get sponsors. I was trying to get as much coverage as I could, and it wasn't easy. I had tried to send out demo tapes over and over again, trying to get sponsored by all these different companies. I think I was trying to get on Circa a ton. The rep, he would give me discounted shoes here and there. I eventually got Decline shoes, or no, Decline. Sorry, not Decline. It was Decline shoes. It was kind of one of those shoe companies that was new. Nobody really knew about it. It was, as we would say, more Hesh than anything. And I was kind of on the fringe of Hesh, if you would call that my style at the time that. But they weren't the worst shoes, and it was kind of the first time I started using vulcanized shoes, and it was a little bit of a weird transition. But once I got used to them, they really helped with flick, board control. It was almost like skating Vans, but at the time I wasn't really like, I liked Vans, but I just, there was no way I was getting on that team, and I don't know if the shop that I worked at and rode for even got in Vans at the time. So it was kind of, you were only able to get maybe say Circa, or I think we had Supra, DVS, Globe, Lakai. Lakai was one that I would have loved to be on. They had some really good shoes and stuff like that, but it wasn't easy. I got no's everywhere I went. Decline was the first shoe sponsor. I had that one for quite a while, and then I reverted back to try and get onto Circa again. I got a little bit of leeway, but it was mostly discounted shoes, not free. So I was grinding as much as I could. I eventually had a lot of people tell me, you got to move to Vancouver, and like you're at a level where you need to get out of this small town if you want to make skateboarding anything. And that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to make it in skateboarding. I wanted to become pro, and that's what drove me. And maybe that wasn't the best thing to like grab onto, but other than that, like I still love the sport. That was just a bonus if I could get to that kind of level. So my mind was focused so much on skateboarding. So I ended up, I think, making some money enough to move to Vancouver. My friend Owen Wojtowicz, he hooked me up with some guys that lived in Vancouver that are from Saskatoon. And he said, like, they should let you in, rent a room in their apartment, kind of thing like that. And that was my first year. But I made the mistake of moving to Vancouver in October when it starts to rain, it starts to get crummy out. And it was intimidating. It was the first time that I had moved away from uh, my home and my life, and living there was a very big change. I thought I knew everything, and these two new roommates, they were nice. They were pretty welcoming. The apartment was sketchy. There was at one point we had found out somebody died in our uh, lobby of our apartment building, and we had walked out trying to do laundry one day and saw it and got told to like leave the area. So it was kind of like, okay, well, that's a that's a fun situation to be in. But that didn't stop me. I stayed till about just after Christmas time, I think, and I had rolled my ankle not long or just before Christmas. I was at an indoor park, rolled it really bad, ended up having to like limp up back up to my house, and then my roommates, they were a little too high that day and they didn't want to leave the house, and I had to walk in the rain with a limp. I used my umbrella as my cane, got up to a store, got some crutches, came back. But eventually I was able to get a flight out of Vancouver back to Red Deer, and I ended up moving back and grabbing a job and just trying to like kind of get myself figured out again. And for the next 5 years, I was in and out of Vancouver consistently. And it wasn't till I think one of the last years that I was out there that I finally got like kind of the breakthrough sponsor. And I got on to Altamont Clothing, Flow, America Flow, and think it was Foundation Skateboards. I was really wanting to get on Toy Machine, and I still was had that like eye on the prize kind of thing, but it never really ended up working out. That team was so popular that there was always riders on it, so it wasn't very often that somebody left or moved up that there was actually a space for me. So being on Foundation wasn't a bad thing because they were similar. They were similar boards. Um, and I loved it. It was, I think the crazy moment was when Judah, one of the photographers in Vancouver who ran, had a lot to do with one of the magazines. He was one of the America reps, and he brought an entire box. And this was my first like free box where it was huge. It had a ton of t-shirts, jackets, shoes, like a bunch of the swag, and it just felt like, wow, I finally made it to this point. This is awesome. And if I can backtrack a little bit, my first photo ended up being in a concrete magazine, and I think it was just an ad for concrete. But I was doing a 5.0 down a 10 stair handrail, and it was through my photographer's girlfriend at the time's legs, and it ended up framing the photo really cool and everything. But it was just such a funny one, and I remember the night we did it. I landed the 5.0 first try. Couldn't land the 50 to warm up. So I just was like, screw it. I'll just do the 5.0, 5.0 to first try. And I think this was the second time I had skated this spot to get a 5.0 on it. This time, 5.0 to first try. And then he said something about trying to do a sequence, which is a bunch of uh, shots in a row. But because it was getting dark and he had his flash set up, as I approached the rail and he started doing the flash, I ollied and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the rail, nothing. I ended up bailing out. I got off the ground. I looked at him. I'm like, I'm done. We already got the one photo. If you're happy with that, I'm happy with that. Let's go. When he had contacted me that I had gotten into concrete, I was so ecstatic because that was definitely one of the goal markers that I had set out. And he had taken lots of photos of me over the years trying to get to that point, and finally that was the one that broke through. And like I said, I didn't take no for an answer. I just kept pushing, and it was amazing. I kept filming and going out to see Owen every so often. He had come done a sorry, he had come out to Red Deer because he was doing a west trip to do an article on the west, and a lot of big names from Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer area, all over the place. Even Saskatchewan and I think Manitoba might have gotten some pretty good guys out there. And I think it was the Prairies edition. I think that's what it was. And he'd come out, and there was a 3-flat-3 double set. And this might be the one that I kind of hate the most because it got published. I was excited for it. And the problem is the landing had an uphill landing. And if anyone that skateboards knows, some of those spots like that, you land, and if you're off a little bit, it'll bounce you forward and you'll just end up getting bucked off your board. And I could not do it that day. I took it to the ground a bunch and just got annihilated by it. We eventually said, actually, we might have gotten kicked out too. I'm not 100% sure, but he's like, you know what? I already got a bunch of photos. There's some good ones in here. Let's pack it up. Just come back and do it. And if you like, you look into a lot of the magazines out in the States, and if you do any 9 clubs, I think there's some skaters that admit like there's tricks that have been put in magazines that maybe they didn't land, and then they find out it's been published and they're like, you mean I have to go back and do this? Like I didn't think we were gonna like run that, and it's just like it's almost like a stress on top of it. So I was like fully planning to do it. However, I ended up leaving for Vancouver not long after going back. So when I came back from Vancouver, they had tore down the spot and put up a two flat three or three flat two or something like that. So it wasn't a three flat three anymore, not the same spot. And I apologize to any of the guys who ever were pissed that I got in another magazine with a photo that never got landed. But I'm sure I'm not the first and I won't be the last. But it definitely wasn't my favorite photo. The 5-0 definitely was my favorite. And I kept trying. I went to Vancouver and it was really hard to crack Vancouver. And it wasn't till like maybe a couple years in where I started having photographers actually taking photos of me because they started to get to know me. They'd see me at the contests, and that's where I built those relationships and tried to really get um, more noticed out there. But it wasn't easy. You went from Red Deer, where I might have been one of the top skaters in Red Deer, and moving to Vancouver, I was definitely not even close. I was good, I was talented. A lot of people thought I had a lot of skill, had a lot of cool tricks, style. However, the skating level was insane. If you know who Wade Desarmo is, Spencer Hamilton, Jordan Hoffert, like all those guys were from or lived in that area, and you're skating with them. Like even Matt Berger, I was skating with him one day, and just watching him put together a line and seeing the technical tricks he was doing in it, and I'm thinking, man, this is insane. And you want to know how hard it was? We went out with a filmer, and the filmer said, "Yeah, I'll film Matt, and then we'll film you." And I had done, I think, my line, which was I think 3 or 4 tricks in the line, about 2 or 3 times I had landed it, maybe 4, and he ended up not filming me. And I think at one point Matt was like, "Why don't you just film him?" And he said he was too hot, too tired, didn't want to film anymore. And that was kind of one of the first real heartbreaks where it was like, this is just ridiculous. I showed you that I could do it, but that's just how it is. Sometimes you've got people who don't see you as someone who they can make any money off of, so they're just not going to waste their time. And that's part of skateboarding. But I did have a core, a bunch of friends who I hung out with who filmed, did photos, who did believe in me, did believe in the others. Some of them just wanted to like get the reps in practicing, so they didn't mind filming and taking photos of you, even if you weren't like a household name. So anyone out there who's trying to make it in the skate industry, just know like you don't have to give up or throw in the towel kind of thing. Like you can keep trying. There's people out there that will look at your style, look at your skating, and want to see you succeed. And those are the people that you want to find. And you need to know that there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be people that doubt you, but you gotta believe in yourself. That's kind of the biggest thing that I learned was believing in yourself and making sure that you had little goals to achieve as you went, so that you could keep going forward. Um, and now we can kind of move towards like where it kind of ended for me. I started to have a weird knee injury one of the last years I lived in Vancouver, and it was kind of, you'd go skateboard and then I'd sit down for like 10 to 20 minutes, and when I get back up my knee would feel like it almost seized in a sense, but I could still move, could still walk. But as soon as I went to like do the squat to hop my skateboard and stuff, I kind of get stuck at the bottom. My knee would seize up and I couldn't jump. So that started to be a real issue, and I didn't really take care of my health that well. A skateboarder's lifestyle is not exactly great. I drank a lot of booze. We would go out party a lot. Like Vancouver, it's got a great beach, great places to go, always something to do. So unfortunately, I actually not unfortunately, I enjoyed the time that I did it. I enjoyed going out with my friends, having a good time. Sometimes you took it too far, and that's sometimes what happens. But I really enjoyed living in van. I really enjoyed hanging out with the friends I had, but I didn't take care of myself in the way that maybe I should have. So my knee, what I found was it would make it worse if I drank the night before and then tried to skateboard the next day. And I'd went for physio for it, and we couldn't really figure anything out with it. And it's still kind of an anomaly to this day. But I do know that if I keep strengthening it, foam rolling, stretching it, doing all the things, keeping hydrated, eating properly, it does work better. But it's still never been the same. And that was kind of the first little downfall that I started to have. And if I maybe would have taken care of myself a little bit better, going to the gym, eating a little bit better, not drinking as much, that could have been something I could have done. And one of the things that I learned as I got older is I never rested that much. I also never went to school, pursued anything else. I was just always trying to just skateboard every day as long as I could in that day. Like that's all I wanted to do. And I know guys that have went to college while skating, gotten a trade, found jobs that have helped them get to where they are, and did that all while like being competitive, going to the contest, getting better, all this stuff. And it wasn't until I got into the fitness industry where I realized if I take days off, my body has a chance to recover and I can come back and be even better the next time I skate. And when I was older and after my hip surgery, I ended up finding like I could take a week off or at least 5 days, come back to skate, and I was still like able to progress a bit, even though I'd been out of the game quite a while and I really wasn't competing. I was just having fun again, enjoying skateboarding for what it was and what it brought me. And I'd go to the skate park. Yeah, my warm ups took longer, and sometimes getting the feel of the board was a little bit different. But most of the time, because I had had that rest, because my body was recovered, it responded great. My skating felt great. Things were coming back that I hadn't done in years. It wasn't like I was learning brand new tricks, but things that were hard were coming back. And I wish I would have known as I was younger that if I would have taken maybe 2 days off after skating really hard, and just allowing my body to relax, take care of it, it'll come back even better. I've had numerous people say like, isn't it weird how like you can take a week off skating, come back, and it's like your best sesh in months. I found that that's exactly what the fitness and physiotherapy and all that stuff, all those people know that, but skateboarders were just, we didn't really know that. And that's maybe something that I wish I would have known. The other thing is never give up on your dream. If your dream is to skate, do it. I didn't have a coach or a parent on me to try harder, do better, or anything like that. Kind of like the hockey parent or soccer parent that's at the sidelines telling coach, "Well, why isn't my kid playing?" and stuff like that. I drove myself, and kids don't necessarily need to be doing their sport every single day all year round. It's always good to learn other sports, stuff like that. I've actually been called somewhat of a jock over the years too because I'm a multi-sport athlete. I can play hockey, I can play baseball, I can do kind of everything. Now, I'm not great at all those things, but I'm better than the majority of people out there who try and pick it up or try and do it only because I had the opportunity and the ability to learn all these different sports when I was growing up. My sister was great for that. She always wanted to take me out and let's go play baseball or let's go play badminton or let's play some hockey or something, right? Like she had me doing trying different things and it was always just her and I doing it or whatever. So know that as a kid, kids don't need to be out there doing it all the time. They need to be kids. And as you get older, yes, you can make that decision on your own to be like, okay, I'm going to commit a little bit more. The other thing is like, know that you can have jobs and still skateboard after work, still skateboard on the weekends, and still get better. You don't need to skate every day, because at that point you're just creating some sort of burnout and your body needs that rest. So um, if there's parents out there or skaters who think like they need to be on the board every minute of the day, just know that you don't need to. If you want to, that's great. That's that passion, but always keep the fact that you love the sport. Don't turn it into something that you hate just because it's a job. If it doesn't feel right, try something different. Leave it alone for a bit. And that's one of the things that I wish I would have known, to just kind of like be a little bit more chill with it and try and build and understand life a little bit more. So I hope you like this episode. This is the Athlete's Climb, where from now on I'm going to be diving into the journeys, the struggles, the breakthroughs of current and former athletes. I want to bring on coaches. I want to bring on business owners, people who are just trying to like make it, or who have made it and maybe didn't make it all the way to the top, whatever it is. And I'm going to cover different sports. And I want people to know what they've learned, what they wish they maybe could tell their younger selves, or different things like that, and where they're headed next. And I just hope that everyone can start, that is into sports, whether you're a parent, coach, athlete, that some of these stories can actually help you learn how to be better in your sport or deal with the adversity. Because for me, I had tons of adversity. There was a lot of people that hated me, hated my skating. A lot of people that didn't believe that I would be very good, or that they could trust that I'd get better, or whatever it was. I have no idea how people think. And maybe some of it was all in my head, and maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was. But I definitely tried my hardest, tried to be a good friend to all the people that were out there, tried to make connections. A big one in all of sports and all of life is making connections and being a good person, because if you're a shitty person, you're usually not going to get the breaks you want. If you don't have the drive, if you don't have the work ethic, it's just not going to pay off the same way as if just thinking you can get by on skill alone. So I hope you guys like this episode, and I'm going to start trying to get some of these interviews filmed and start dropping them as soon as I can, because I don't want to wait any longer. I'm here. This is The Spot on Ice, and thank you for stopping by, and we'll check you in the next video.